So Luke is saying, is the shame around sex naturally occurring and co-opted by religions, or is it a byproduct of the ingrained religious culture? Because it seems to affect even non-religious communities.
That's a good question, but remember, no matter where you were born or raised, you are in a religious community. You could be raised by an atheist family in the United States, and you're surrounded by Christian craziness. So if you look at, there are cultures that are sex positive. I will point to the Muoso in China, and there's the shame and guilt simply don't seem to be there. So we have some evidence. If you study other cultures, that the key is don't let yourself be fooled that Western culture or Islamic or Hindu culture are normal. Once you realize they are abnormal in terms of the greater history of culture, then you start looking at other cultures and you realize that there's lots of other ways of being sexual. And shame and guilt, I'm not saying they aren't present in other cultures, but there are cultures in Polynesia, for example, the Hawaiian Islands. Before Western contact, you could get your head cut off for eating the wrong food, but nobody cared who you had sex with. And there was the concept of marriage was only reserved for the royalty. The concept of marriage is not universal. There's no imperative in every culture for marriage. There just isn't. There's a Manganian culture in the South Pacific that seems to be very sex-free or guilt-free. No shame and guilt among the Manganians in the South Pacific. A lot of Polynesian cultures were incredibly sex positive until the Presbyterians arrived, until the Muslims arrived, and until the Catholics arrived. So, no, the answer to the question is no, it's not natural. There may be a little bit. I don't know how you get something natural that's cultural. I mean, shame and guilt are a cultural concept. Bonobos don't have shame and guilt, and neither do chimpanzees. And we're just primates. So I'm guessing if we didn't have culture telling us to be shameful and guilty, we wouldn't feel guilt or shame.
Yeah, I feel like we could do a whole episode on shame and guilt with you. I would love to talk about that because that completely fascinates me. Katie Rin is asking, what about the cultures which started showing a trend of becoming sexually repressive even before getting influenced by Abrahamic religions? Are there
yes.
like
there was some cultures with incredibly sex negative practices. I'm not saying non-Western, non-Abrahamic cultures weren't. I'm just saying a lot of them were very sex positive. And as Western culture and Islamic culture took over the world, and Hindu culture, by the way, took over the world, they eradicated all these sex positive. Here's an example of, it's just as obvious as the nose on your face if you visit India. If you look at some of the temples in India, they have orgies sculptured out on their religious temples. Now, if you ask a local what's going on there, they'll make some bullshit statement up for you. But the fact was, 1,000 years ago, Hindu culture was incredibly sex positive. One of the more sex positive cultures on the planet. What changed? I'll tell you what changed. Islam came in. When the Mughals took over India, they wiped out the sex positive cultures. They went down to the south of India where women routinely walked around topless and said, you better cover up or we're chopping your head off. They did not convert all the Hindus to Islam, but they did make the Hindus obey Islamic sexual practices. So as recently as 1,000 years ago, the evidence is on the walls of their temples. You can't deny the sex positivity of what you see right there before your eyes.
Kama Sutra. Too.
That was the basis of all that. You're absolutely right. And it was written about 800 AD, I believe the Kama Sutra was. Mm-hmm. So how do you get such a widely popular and used and sculpted piece of literature if you don't have some level of sex positivity? Now, I'm not saying they weren't still misogynistic, because there were still elements of misogyny. That just came with the territory and is pretty common among a lot of cultures, whether it's sex positive or not. It's a spectrum. Think of it as a spectrum. Islam and Christianity are about as sex negative as you can get. And on the other end, the Manganians are about as sex positive as you can get. And then there's cultures everywhere in between. So, where was Hinduism? Well, may have been 50% in the middle. That's still a hell of a lot more positive than Islam is.
Yeah. Lois is asking, even after deconverting, we often don't realize that our attitudes and emotions about sex are left over from religion. How does a psychologist help people understand that and get over it?
That is such a great question. And let me just say, you will find all the answers right here. I guarantee it.
And he's showing a picture for those who are listening, a picture of his book, Sex and God, which is a phenomenal book, by the way.
It wasn't a picture; it was the book itself.
Sex and God. Yeah, and I'm not just touting the book. I entirely agree. My biggest challenge as a psychologist is to help people get over the trauma, the sexualized trauma that they bring into my oftentimes. Here's where I begin. I begin with everybody this way. That's not to say it works equally well with everybody, but I start with masturbation. And my words to you are, this is the only life you have. It's the only body you're going to get. And it's designed for pleasure. Pleasure yourself and learn how to pleasure yourself, and pay attention to the guilt message while you're masturbating, while you're playing with your clit or your dick. You just enjoy and pay attention to the guilt messages. You can do two things at once. You can be ambidextrous, play with your clit in one hand and listen to the voices in the other, and realize those are shame programs, and just say, aha, I see you there. I hear you there. I'm going to keep having fun, and just practice that. The longer you do it, the less that voice, the quieter it'll get, until you just can focus on enjoying your body. If you can do that alone will get you halfway to where you want to go sexually. I almost guarantee it.
So the solution is to masturbate. So the solution is to masturbate more often.
The solution is to enjoy your body. I don't care if it's masturbating, enjoying a good meal, enjoying a good massage, a shower, a swim, a sunbathe. I don't care. Enjoy your body. It's the only one you've got.
Right.
Masturbation isn't the only way to enjoy your body.
What about the people who actually enjoy a little bit of a guilt?
Well, go for it. I have a great story that the Catholics among our listeners will appreciate. I had a girlfriend back in 1989. We were dating. We only dated for about 4 or 5 months, and I never went to her house. She always came to my house. And then one day I was in the neighborhood, and I'd been there before, but I didn't go very often. And I knocked on her door. Remember, this before cell phones. And she let me in. I go in there and I notice in her bedroom, she's got crucifixes and Mary pictures and Bibles, all this religious stuff in her bedroom. And I'd never seen that before. So I asked her, hey, Gina, what's all this religious stuff doing in your bedroom? And here's her very words. Well, Daryl, if I know you're coming over, I take it down because I just can't come with Jesus watching me.
That was the first thing I thought.
Wow. I wonder if you hear the guilt messages and you start developing a Pavlovian association. Yeah. It's like, oh, I can't. I need someone to make me to get.
Yeah.
I have a confession actually. Oh, this stuff is bringing up so many things for me. In Pakistan where I grew up, right, you had the adhan, the prayer call that rings out over everything.
Right.
And if you ever want to do anything, you got a girlfriend, you want to make out or do anything like that, you had to do it outside because for us, there was no place to go unless you had a friend with an apartment or anything. So you'd always find these out. So my sex life for the first at least many years was just under trees in parks. It was all outdoors.
In the woods.
Yeah. And
it's like old school cruising.
Yeah. And 5 times a day you'd hear this prayer call. And I started developing a thing, because the prayer call would be happening and I'd be, we'd be going at it, and it would happen at the same time. And for some reason, I developed this weird association between the adhan and like, I don't know.
It's not weird. It's not weird. It's simple conditioning. It's simply.
It's kind of hot making that
yeah. And remember, that's probably where fetishes come from. When people have kinks and fetishes, they probably come from that. I could talk about we could do a whole program just on where
do a whole different
prayer call fetish.
There's a lot of I can't even remember how many Iranian TV series and movies I've seen in Iran that a boy was just about to do something sexy and they were going down the wrong path. And they were just about, they were like, and then the azan played and they came to their senses and they got reminded, like, oh my God, God is watching. Like, it seemed like right before they were about to do something bad, God saved them the azan started playing and they were like, oh my God. So again, that's a major theme actually in a lot of movies and TV series. So
it is.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely, this question by Luke, I really want to answer that one. Can I jump into that one?
I'm going to read it out. I was going to say, we never came to our senses during the azan. We just came. But anyway, Luke McDonald,
over it.
Personal experience. Luke McDonald is asking, is there a way to explain this quote unquote brokenness to partners and other people? A partner and I got so far, but then I ended up breaking down on them. It kind of killed it because they were so freaked.
Luke is an ex-Catholic, by the way.
Okay. Whoa, that's helpful too. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to throw that damn word out. I hate the word brokenness. You are not broken. Period. Get rid of that concept. That concept is more destructive than helpful, in my estimation. What you have is a developmental delay. You, as we said earlier, you have skipped some developmental phases, or you haven't gotten through some developmental phases. Normal, natural things. You may be 10 years behind what most people would be because of your Catholicism. So I would explain it to the partner. I'm still dealing with the programming my Catholic background gave me. It probably disturbed my developmental, my development. And let's take it slow and easy and enjoy ourselves. And with your help, I'm going to get over this shit. And I want to enjoy you and you want to enjoy me. So I would take that approach. It's an approach that says it's normal. If you had a physical disability, you would tell that person, I have a physical disability. I can't do missionary position. I only can do some other position. And your partner would probably understand that. Or I need lots of warm up because I'm still trying to deal with my own demons around my Catholic. I like lots of kissing. I like lots of touching. I like some sexy talk. Whatever it is, tell them what you want, what you need, and experiment. Because I want to remind Luke, but I want to remind everybody, sex is first and foremost play. So what you're learning to do in sex is you're learning to play with another human being. You're learning to play at giving them pleasure and teaching them how to give you pleasure. If you approach it as learning to play, you're going to get a lot farther down the road than using the categories that the Catholic Church taught you. Brokenness. That's religious bullshit. That, just to put it mildly. All right.
There's so much to say about this lexicon, like the brokenness, losing virginity, losing your innocence. I mean, you have a term like losing virginity for something when you're actually gaining a new aspect of your life,
exactly.
A new natural thing.
Right.
And we've internalized.
Yeah,
all this.
remember,
it's
virginity
insane.
is a religious concept. It's not a biological. There's no such thing as virginity. It is a figment of religious imagination. So get rid of that bullshit.
Yeah, when you gain new experiences in life, people usually don't describe it as losing something.
Yeah,
you're not losing anything.
Yeah. No, but you don't do that with anything else. I mean, people do it as a joke now. They come like, oh, but But most of the time you say like, oh, this was my first time that I went to this, that I left my country. This is my first time eating this. This is my first time watching this type of a movie. But all of a sudden, when it comes to having sex, like, oh, I lost something. No, you didn't. You gained something. You, you gained a new experience. Before we go to the last question, I do want to remind people who are watching this not live and who are not a patron that if you want to participate in these live discussions with us and ask your questions like the other people in the live chat, you could become a patron. Link to our Patreon is in the description. Once you do become a patron, we do send you messages about when we're about to go live and how you could participate. Ali, last question.
Okay. So we're going to go with the last question. I also want to tell everybody that we have our end of month Q&A happening on Friday night. Friday night. That is public. That's for everybody. There's no time limit. You can ask anything you want to, and there's going to be just a few days before the election. So yeah, just bring in your questions and let's go with it. Last question for Dr. Ray, who's been incredibly generous with his time. Katie's asking, okay, I have this question. There is this concept of gungat, which came about 2,000 years ago, which is before Islam. So is it fair that Islam boosted the repressiveness which was already present? So
this is about Hinduism, by the way. This is in Hinduism, but
it's also it's basically it's a veil that covers a head and comes over the face. So it's part of Pakistan culture and Indian culture. I think it's a subcontinental word.
Yeah.
Gungat. So it's about veiling and keeping your women under sort of some sort of
right.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind that when Muhammad was conquering the Arabian Peninsula, he was conquering a whole lot of other cultures, some of which practiced this very practice. Only it was in Saudi Arabia. So when he conquered it, he did not necessarily say you have to do it X, Y, or this way or that way. He oftentimes let the cultures continue in the repressive. Female repressive practices they already had. He didn't interfere with them. In fact, female genital mutilation predates Islam, and he let them continue doing that as well. Male circumcision was a Jewish practice. Nobody else practiced it around there, but he let the Jews who converted to Islam keep circumcising their boys. So that was the brilliance of Muhammad. Muhammad, as I say in my book, The God Virus, Muhammad created the most successful religion on the planet. I don't mean by numbers. I mean by speed and power. He did it. He was a genius militarily, but more importantly, he was a religious genius. He knew how to capture people. And he, rather than force people to adopt certain practices, he let them stay. Well, he did the same thing when he went to India, or he didn't, but when his followers went to India, they simply continued letting. Well, some of these practices are beneficial in some way, shape, or form, obviously to the males controlling the women. So they flourish and the practices expand. And that's the Mughals. The Mughals really enforced this all over India and all sorts of places that it didn't exist before. So I don't know this particular name. I've never heard that name before. But the fact is the practice of covering women is not new to Islam by a long shot.
Yeah, Gungat is usually on the night of the wedding night. The bride sort of sits in a very shy or coy way with her this sort of veil hanging over her head, so you can't see her face. I mean, that's the whole idea. So it's similar to any other kind of veiling, part of modesty culture, quote unquote modesty. Luke is saying of the final comment here, he's saying, and I think we agree with him, guys, this live stream has been brilliant, genuinely really helpful. Tell Ray thanks so much. We'll definitely check out his book. And I would second that. You should definitely check out the book. And
and follow again. Another reminder, Recovering from Religion, check them out, search for them. Again, if you're listening to the public version of this, all the links are in the description. There's a lot more resources. You've had this live stream is good. Imagine all the resources that is available, that was built throughout the many years by many volunteers under the supervision of Dr. Ray. So yeah, if you need help, go check them out. And also recommend Dr. Daryl Ray and his book and his organization to people that you know need help as well. Like if you know somebody else that could benefit from this, let them know about this. Okay.